The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Order. The member for Northern Territory will cease interjecting.
My question without notice is to the Prime Minister. I ask the Prime Minister, does he recall his answer in response to a question from the Leader of the Opposition on the 6th of May on the impact of the superannuation guarantee levy when he said, and I quote, "It would not be an addition, but rather a substitution for wages and salaries, which would otherwise be paid as cash." Will he confirm that a deal has been done with the ACTU under which the super levy will not count towards the next wage case, and your government will support the full ACTU claim for a national wage rise later this year? And why did you mislead the House on the 6th of May?
Don't be absurd. Don't be absurd. Mr Speaker, there is a simple notion about that if superannuation guarantee levy is not paid, there will be no cost whatsoever to employers. Now that is a false assumption, because it would be paid otherwise as wages. But that's not to say, and it will not be the case, that it will be paid to the exclusion of increases in wages, because both can be paid. As I indicated, we will need only to devote a third of the productivity available in the next few years to pay this increase over the course of the 1990s. Now, Mr Speaker, I drew attention. I met the ACTU last week, and I drew attention to the One Nation commitment to support for a continuing role for national wage cases.
Order.
The government will determine its attitude to the size and timing of national wage increases in the light of the objective of keeping Australia's inflation rate comparable with our trading partners. And may I add, Mr Speaker, that in the One Nation statement we have the commitment from the ACTU for the first time for organised labour in this country ever to commit themselves to a wages policy that will guarantee an inflation rate comparable with that of our trading partners. I said that given the present information we had about inflation, earnings growth and output growth, there would appear to be room for a national wage increase and the SGC, the superannuation guarantee levy, over the course of 1992-93, consistent with our inflation target. However, I gave no commitment on the timing of the increase or the quantum of the increase. In fact, the ACTU has not yet formulated a claim, and there have been no discussions with the government on quantum or timing. I also mentioned Treasury evidence to the Senate which show that on even a modest forecast of productivity growth, the guarantee levy's implementation over the decade will equal, as I said a minute ago, only 1/3 of expected productivity gains. Now, Mr Speaker, for a sensible development of superannuation, a sensible development of a retirement incomes policy for higher standards of living in retirement, for the retired aged, particularly those who will join the retired age population around 2010 and 2015, the baby boomers of beyond the Second World War, as the demographic double the number of retired aged persons in the community compared to today, there will need to be in place a retirement income system to meet it, to not only provide some relief from the burden on the Commonwealth budget, but actually to provide a better standard of living, and in so doing, Mr Speaker, provide a necessary and advantageous pool of national savings in the meantime. Now, I should have thought, Mr Speaker, that any opposition would have regarded the development of such a policy as an unambiguously good thing for Australia. An unambiguously good thing. Having left superannuation as a preserve of basically the wealthy or those in the public sector and denied ordinary Australians a chance to have any access to these superannuation provisions, the government changed the tax treatment of superannuation in the early to mid-1980s to milk it. He says he regards giving ordinary Australians a go as milking it. That is, it's all right for the people of Vaucluse, but if you give the ordinary Australian working person in the north-western suburbs of Melbourne or the western suburbs of Sydney, that's milking it.
Order. The House will come to order. The member for Keating will cease interjecting.
Is the most spiteful and cold-blooded leader that the Liberal Party's ever offered to the Australian people. And he does so always to put the boot into working people, as does the member for Bennelong in seeking to knock their wages off. And Mr Speaker, they're running true for course. If you turned up the Hansards, of the 1950s or the 1930s or the 1920s, whether it was Stanley, Melbourne, Bruce or any of the other fops who represented them, you would find it was always the same rhetoric, crushing ordinary people's interests. That's what the question's about, and that's why we reject it with the contempt it deserves.